So hello and welcome, my friends. So finally, I'm recording this Crystalline Grid upgrades webinar. I had some technical issues last week, so my computer's camera wasn't working properly, so I had to reschedule. But since I'm recording during the day and I can't make it in the evenings this week, so I'm going to record it and then I will send the link to you. So this will probably be a shorter webinar, but if you have any questions, you can always come back to me via Messenger or email, or when we do the next Q&A open session for the group, then we can talk about Crystalline Grid again. So welcome. I'm here to talk to you about the recent changes that were done to the Crystalline Grid board. So as you know, Raquel last year, late around the fall, she's changed most of the boards, so she's now launched upgrades for all of the boards. Excuse me. So we are going to cover this new version, as it's a much simpler version than the previous one, and some things have really changed. So I'm going to go through the main changes. Also, the manual is completely new. I've sent you the manual along with the new board for printing. So please also read the manual and let me know if you have questions. So let's look at the presentation that I had to share with you today. So right, so I'm just going to quickly go through the slides that I normally use for my course. I've already taught the version 2, this recent version in London in January, to a group of students, and they really enjoyed it, and many people actually said they even prefer using the Crystalline Grid now rather than the blue board. So I think it's really what resonates with you the most. So I'm just going to show you the slides and just going to quickly explain a little bit about Crystalline Grid. So as you know, the Crystalline Grid is a concept that was totally created by Raquel from Brazil in 2012. She officially launched this board on the 12th of December 2012 to coincide with the full activation of the so-called planetary Crystalline Grid, so the new consciousness grid that was fully activated in 2012. So the focus of this board is the inner universe. So we'll be doing inner alchemy, working with the elements, the platonic solids, to clear or rebalance the subtle bodies, all our energy systems, and also to work on our DNA. So we're going to be reprogramming the DNA by clearing all negative emotions, negative beliefs, archetypes, and then reprogramming the DNA with new positive potentials to expand our DNA to its maximum potential, and to include positive emotions and beliefs. And also, we also include codes to activate our divine DNA, which is quite interesting as a concept. So this again is a world-class healing modality. It's being taught around the world nowadays. I've also been to China recently to teach quantum psionics, and I'll be going back very soon. So we believe this is a very, very advanced healing modality already for the 21st century. We've already talked about in other courses. So this is a tool and a modality that was created for very deep healing work. So we are focusing on our inner universe, on our personal history, aiming to release and correct and bring to the light, to our awareness, all the deep-seated issues lying in our unconscious, in our memories, in our cells, and to release them with a loving and healing intention. And this will help us also to move beyond our blocks, our limitations, many different issues that may be preventing us from becoming our best versions. And this will help us to achieve higher consciousness levels. It's a progressive work, inner work, of course. This is not just magic wand that we wave and everything goes away, but it helps to go deeper into ourselves, to clear layers of toxins and memories and blocks and limitations from this lifetime, from other lifetimes, We can go to the Akashic records. We can go to all the information contained within our DNA and all the light and information contained in our energy fields. So we'll be working on very, very deep levels. So we can do a true energetic surgery with this board. Remember, this is a very profound, very, very deep healing work. In the previous version, we were working a lot with the help of the spiritual egregores, remember? But now that is no longer used in this board, in this version. We'll be using just the platonic solids with the intention to also to clear and then to rebalance the subtle bodies. And it's working very well as well. So this is to help us to clear the energetic bodies, all the subtle bodies on all dimensions, so then we can do the, the reprogramming of the DNA in a very safe and light and clear space, let's say. So we first need to clear whatever negativity or ill-qualified energies may be affecting us or the client, and then we can go and do the, the work, very detailed work on the DNA. And also we can activate those light codes to tap into our divine DNA and to expand it, so we can become co-creators of our reality as much as possible. So the main purpose of the crystalline grid, as we have already talked about, is to look deep within ourselves. So our focus becomes our personal history. So that's why we have to do the anamnesis, so a detailed analysis of the personal history of yourself or your client, to focus and to detect what issues need to be worked on, and then we'll be aiming to really completely transform ourselves and the person as a whole. That's why this is also a holistic therapy. Okay, so we can focus on any information for clearing and healing. I will send this information anyway, this presentation. So the crystalline grid is based on the premises that energy follows thought. So whatever we focus on expands, and also that we attract what we vibrate. So it's not what we just think, it's actually what we are vibrating also on our inner and unconscious levels. So that's why we need to go deeper and deeper into ourselves, not to attract the same negative experiences or repetitive patterns over and over again. So we'll become inner alchemists for deep healing and also for our own self-knowledge. This is an ideal tool for becoming this inner alchemist, for exploring your inner worlds, and also to further expand your consciousness by bringing to the light and then clearing any repetitive limiting patterns, beliefs, feelings. And this will allow for very powerful inner transformation and a very powerful release and a sense of like you have been cleared and defragmented. It's very interesting that the effect that crystalline grid has on people. Okay, so this is a tool for self-knowledge and spiritual evolution. It's very interesting to use, and this will help to bring to greater awareness all our untapped potential. But remember that, this will also come with great spiritual responsibility and ethics, because we're actually connecting and working on the person's most intimate information. So it's very important to do with a sense of respect and reverence and humility, and thanking the universe for becoming this pure and clear channel for healing and helping people as much as we can with a sense of respect and responsibility. And remember that whatever content or information that you'll be working on the person or on your client will also be worked through you, because the brain doesn't distinguish if you're working on your own information or somebody else's information. So that's quite interesting as well. Excuse me. So this will also support spiritual evolution of the practitioner and also the client. So remember, this is a very, very interesting tool to work with, and it's quite different from the blue board. So we've already looked at the subtle bodies and DNA focus. Again, this is complementary quantum psionics work, so we can work alongside the blue boards. For example, in a session, if the dodecahedron keeps coming up, or if you find the need for the very deep spiritual clearing, or if you feel there are like negative emotions, beliefs, a lot of emotional stress, so that might indicate that you might need to go and do some work on the crystalline grid. So you can pause the blue board and open the crystalline grid and do the work, and then after you've finished the work on the crystalline grid, you can go back to the blue board and see if there are still any tools that you might need to activate. Otherwise, you just do divine delivery and you close the session. So both boards can be used together. This will make your healing sessions even more complete and effective. So again, this is a very natural and holistic complementary healing modality. But remember that we are not meant to interfere or replace any medical treatments. We can also work alongside other holistic treatments like Reiki or crystals or color healing, sound healing. So we can always integrate different techniques in a session if you have the time and the experience and the knowledge for it. Okay, so this is not linked to any religion or belief system. And I find that this new version, the version 2 of the crystalline grid, it's even easier for people around the world to connect with, because some of those spiritual egregores, they were very specific to a certain spiritual view of the world, especially in Brazil, where they talk a lot about all these different groups, like the shamans and the healers and spiritual healing, Umbanda. So there's a lot of information that is not as familiar to people around the world. So I find that the fact that we no longer talk about that makes this modality easier to use worldwide. For example, in China, they don't even know who Archangel Michael is. So it was more difficult to explain all these different spiritual groups and egregores to them. So now we are, this makes it more neutral in a way and easier to use, even though we're still connecting with our spiritual guides and mentors and helpers, but they're not as specific as they were before. So again, the basic principles and techniques remain the same. So we've already talked about this in previous courses. And still we are operating and working with the crystalline grid using holographic mind projection, creative visualization techniques, so quantum sonics, which I believe is an advanced mental projection of healing frequencies, high vibrational healing frequencies. But alongside the practitioner's visualization skills, there needs to be a loving healing intention. So combining the mind and the heart, the coherent heart, that's very important to create a very powerful healing frequency when you're using it. And also the power of the spoken words. So the commands are also very important. And I encourage you to say them out loud if you can, because of the vibration and the power that you can put into the commands. And also in the version 2, the commands have become simplified. We don't need to repeat the same commands over and over again, especially for the DNA reprogramming, which makes it also easier for the practitioner to use. So the tools we'll be using on the crystalline grid is still our hands, our intention. We'll be using the 5 platonic solids, like in the previous version, and the crystal Merkaba, and any crystal wands, but also we call them our own personalized tools, which in this case will be any crystals that you like, that you have. You can start placing your crystals around the board, things like you would like to work with, and then intuitively during the session, either for clearing the subtle bodies and harmonizing them, or also during the DNA reprogramming, you can also play with your crystals through specific intentions, and I will explain how to do that. Okay, so these are the previous crystalline grid test versions that Reggie went through. So in 2012, she reached the other model, the other version. Okay, and this went on until 2017 and 2018. And then this was, the version 1, where we were still doing the different points, colored points on the left-hand side under the platonic solids, and then we would create our own personalized tools using stickers and color dots to place them and placing them on the right-hand side. So this no longer applies to the new version. The new version is a bit more three-dimensional, let's say. So it looks like it has some depth to it, and it has been simplified. And we also have new symbols on the board, like you can see on your boards. Like you have these symbols now here. I will explain what they mean. And we no longer have those color dots underneath the platonic solids, but there's nothing going on the right-hand side. So I will explain the changes now. So what has changed in the new crystalline grid version? So apalmetry or deep spiritual clearing, so the first phase of the treatment, has now been inserted into the platonic solids. So the platonic solids will correspond to the idea that we are clearing on different levels. So we'll be using earth to clear and rebalance earth, water to clear and rebalance water, fire to clear and rebalance fire, air to clear and rebalance air, and then ether, which is more like an integration force energy that will help to recalibrate all of them. So it's much more simplified now. So we'll be using the platonic solids. We'll just take them one by one, starting from the bottom. We'll be going upwards, so starting with earth, so the cube, and you'll just bring them, after you've opened the session, you'll just bring them over to the board, and you can do circular movements intuitively. So we no longer have to follow a specific procedure in terms of, so for example, you know, if you want to clear the subtle bodies after you've done the activation and you've opened and connected with Divine I Am Presence, you've done all the activation, and then you just clear using your cube, and you can do, you know, anti-clockwise movements to clear anything in the subtle bodies, always using what do you call them, in the platinum vortex, to clear and to transmutate any energies. So we start by clearing, doing anti-clockwise movements, okay? And then we can you know, rebalance, recalibrate, harmonize, doing clockwise movements. So remember that anti-clockwise movements normally are used for clearing, removing, detaching, releasing. And then when you do clockwise, it's more an activation, putting in energy, new, clear, fresh healing energies. So we'll just do the whole thing. You can go around the whole aura, or you can go specifically onto some area of the body. Remember, we are projecting the person over the star. So you can just do around the aura, or you can just work on specific points, okay? And you bring it back here. Then you do the same with water. First, anti-clockwise movements to clear any negativity, any density, the emotional body, anywhere in the body. So if you feel there are some areas that need clearing, like the heart area, or there are some, you know, recurrent thoughts and emotions in the head, you can also work around the head, and then you just clear, and then you continue doing all the clearing, rebalancing with this intention, and then you put the new energy, so new fresh energies to recalibrate, restore, rebalance the subtle bodies, mainly with water element. And then you do the same with fire. Fire is such a powerful transmuting agent. The divine fire of transmutation. So you do again anti-clockwise movements to clear anything in the body, any negative or ill-qualified energies, any toxicity, using the power of fire anywhere you feel you might need, also around the aura. And then you can also clear and just use the platinum vortex down here for transmutation and just transformation of any negativity. Then you do the same with air. So we are clearing air and rebalancing it around the body. So air to rebalance air, especially the thoughts, mental patterns, beliefs, anything that is conditioning us on the mental level. Also any links to any social, family conditioning, anything that we may have absorbed or generated during our lifetimes. We just clear it all. And then we can you know, recalibrate, harmonize all the subtle bodies at all levels of reality. And finally, we'll use ether to balance ether. So ether is so-called the quintessence, the fifth element, the one that unites it all, and it's a very beautiful integrating energy. So clearing first, anti-clockwise, and then we do the clockwise movement to really harmonize and seal and protect the aura using ether, beautiful energies. And then this part is done. And then you could also use any crystals that you like over the body. You know, if you just take your crystals, anything, or you can just use black tourmaline if you feel there is still some negativity to clear around any areas of the body, using black tourmaline to clear, for example. You know, we can use any crystals, anything, citrine to give energy, to provide joy, happiness, abundance, prosperity. You know, we can play with our crystals as well, so that you can also do like a crystal healing session using psionics. So you can use any crystals that you like. So remember, we are no longer invoking the spiritual egregores. We no longer need that. We just simplify the commands. We just use the platonic solids, okay? So I think that makes it easier and also faster and easier to understand. So remember what I was saying, that the extra or personalized tools now have been all integrated into this idea of using quartz crystals, any crystals that you like during your sessions, according to your intuition, your knowledge, whatever crystals you have around the house. So if you know a lot about crystals, you can have a lot of crystals. If you know little, then you just use 2 or 3 according to your intuition and your interests. Okay, we can also use clear crystals, any colored crystals, for example, the chakra crystals according to the colors. We can also use Atlantean wands, any crystal points. So we can also use any crystal points you might have. Big, small, I mean, it's really to you and what you have available. Atlantean wands are nice to use. They really direct, and I will show you some examples now of Atlantean wands that I've taken off the internet. So they can either be, they normally have a point made of quartz crystal, a very fine point, and then in the back of the wand there's always a crystal also. It's like to keep the energy, like the energy comes in and comes out through the tip. So normally the Atlantean wands are very simple to use. You can just use a copper tube, like something like a cylinder, and then you can just place one crystal, like a round crystal, rough crystal on one end, and then you can put a crystal point on the other end. That would create just gluing it, and then you can put a copper wire around it, connecting the bottom and the top. So that will be a very simplified version of a crystal Atlantean wand. But there are many you can buy even on eBay or other websites that include more sophisticated versions, like full-on crystals, very elaborate. So it's really up to you if you like to use this. It makes the energy very, very like a laser beam. So be careful when you use it, and don't point it randomly at people, because it's very strong energy. Personally, I recommend my students, I prefer if they use just, you know, crystal points, natural points to start with. Even in my crystal healing courses, I prefer to use this because it's a softer, gentler energy that is easier for the human body to receive, rather than a powerful light beam, like a laser beam. So be careful when you use it, but, you know, feel free to experiment and see how you feel with all these different options. So going back to the changes on the crystalline grid. So let me just check one thing. So there are new codes, new symbols on the boards. So as you can see on your board here on the right hand side, now we have symbols, and they correspond to code soul, code spirit, Okay, so remember that code soul takes us directly to the emotional field and to any information that is contained within that field. And this will help you to do the activation of the commands during the DNA reprogramming. And then also the code spirit symbol will activate information, clear and activate information within the mental field. Then you have this treble clef, like this, like it corresponds to any musical tones, sound healing, the pineal tones. I will explain a little bit more about that. So this is helping us to connect through the power of sound healing to a wider and collective grid. So the idea is that through sound, through the frequency of sound, this will connect us to the collective, to the crystalline grid, okay? And anyone in resonance with it will be able to receive it. So this is some information that Regia has recently studied about the pineal tones. I'm not sure how familiar you all are with pineal tones, but these are some group experiments based on sound healing and chanting and toning to activate the pineal gland, which is around the third eye inside your skull. And they say it's the doorway to the higher realms to receive, you know, transcendental energies, information, metaphysical energies. So it's like our gateway to spirit. So through toning and chanting specific frequencies, you can activate more and more your pineal gland and develop your psychic gifts, your extrasensorial capabilities, your perception, clairvoyance, all different, you know, possibilities that the human being has. So toning is really powerful, and you know, we've known about toning for thousands of years. Many cultures have toning, like in Tibet, in the Eastern monasteries, also here in the West, Gregorian chanting. You know, the chanting even of Native Americans. There's a lot of chanting to help people to go into trance states, to these altered states of consciousness, and that's where we can do very deep healing, visualization, astral travel. So in that trance, through the sound, it's easier to access information and to move into the, you know, to the invisible realms. So this idea of using sound is very interesting, and let's see how you feel about it when you use it. So we don't actually need to use sound. It's more about the intention of connecting with sound healing frequencies. So, and there's also a new symbol here on the right top side. This is called the Merkaba, or it's the Merkaba symbol. So it's like a development from the Merkaba, the traditional Merkaba that we have here at the bottom. So this is still the Merkaba, the light vehicle that allows, you know, beings, light beings, ascended masters also. It is said throughout history that they were using this like light vehicle that were activating so they could travel through time and space and help and deliver information, whatever was needed. So it's like we are activating our own light vehicle so we can do very deep healing beyond time and space. And the Merkaba symbol is now used for divine delivery. So we are using this for divine delivery. This is where we'll be sharing on the crystalline grid all the seeds, all the stem cells of any healing session. So it's like we're putting all these seeds on the collective grids, on the crystalline grid, the Christ consciousness grid, to help everyone involved directly and indirectly, anyone around the world who is in resonance with this work. So we are aiming to give more and more light, more information, more energy and healing to people around the world, also to strengthen the crystalline grid that surrounds the planet. So this will be done at the end of the healing session, okay? That's the moment when we share any information on the collective. Let me just, what have I done here? So the idea behind all of this is still the same, like we had, like this is called the crystalline grid because we're working straight and directly with the crystalline grid, this new consciousness grid that surrounds the planet, helping to access it, to strengthen it, to work with it during our sessions, okay? So we still work. First part of the treatment is all about cleansing and rebalancing the subtle bodies, the meridians, the chakras, all of the different areas of the body and of the energy field of the person, okay? And we use the crystals, the platonic solids, like I've explained. And then the second part of the treatment will be reprogramming the DNA. And we'll be you know, deactivating any negative information. Okay, so we'll be still doing this reprogramming of the DNA in the same way we were doing in the previous version, okay? But it has become simplified, especially in terms of commands. And the other thing that has changed is that we'll be touching these symbols that I've just shown you, the code soul, code spirit, and the pineal tones during the session. So every time you do the activation of the code soul, and then you do, you know, you say the command or code spirit, you'll be touching these symbols. Okay, just to help you to keep focus and to really place your intention during the treatments. Okay, so you can still look at your manual for the step-by-step. And again, we can still work on specific areas of the DNA. If you feel like there is like some fear that is more specific, and you can just sense that is placed specifically on some area of the DNA, you can focus there more and more. You can even place other crystals there for a while to cleanse, to harmonize. So it's become much more intuitive and like free to use in terms of the DNA, I think. So now I will just quickly open the other presentation to show you about the reprogramming of the DNA step by step, because I think this is probably interesting and useful to share with people who are learning this new version. Okay, so again, we are still reprogramming the DNA using the same steps. So we still open with our hand. I am activate the opening of the 12 strands of DNA of the person X. Okay, you touch the flower of life, you open, or you can tap 12 times. We are working on the 12 energetic strands, as you know, according to Cryan's teachings. So we always start by touching the corresponding symbol, so code soul or code spirit. So for example, if I'm releasing some fear, I would start with the code soul. So you just take your crystal here, and then you bring it over and you start just clearing. You know, you don't have to draw the petals. You just do like more kind of circular movements to deprogram, to clear, okay? So you don't need to really draw or outline as much as in the previous version. It's more about the intention with circular motions around the flower of life, using crystals or any tools, the Atlantean wand, keeping your focus, your concentration. So you would say, after you've touched the symbol, you would say, code soul, my consciousness chooses to deactivate information of fear. For example, in the 4 levels of belief, you can clear, you can even bring it down to the platinum vortex, and then you would do the code spirit, my consciousness chooses to deactivate information of fear in the 4 levels of belief. So you still clear. If you feel the fear is like located in a specific point, you just insist on that point, just over and over, and then you can bring it to the platinum vortex. Okay, so you keep doing that for all the, you know, negative emotions or beliefs that you want to clear. Okay, so here is again a list like we've used before. Fear, any fear, the more specific the better. So I don't know, fear of spiders or fear of you know, serpents or something like that. Most people have these kind of fears. So anger towards someone, or sadness, or worry, guilt, blame, judgment, abandonment. So all these kind of negative emotions that keep replaying in people's lives. Okay. So remember that we keep repeating this procedure for each information. So you first touch the code soul symbol, mainly for the emotions, and the code spirit symbol for beliefs. Okay. You may use any other tools, any other crystals. People even use fluorescences. You can even just symbolically put some, for example, rescue remedy or any fluorescences that you may have over the flower of life, or using color healing affirmations to increase the power and effectiveness of your healing treatments. And you keep sending any negativity into the infinitive symbol, the platinum vortex, okay, during the session. That will help to cleanse and transmute any negative energies or information that you might be tapping into, okay? So we still have this information about the 7 karmic shadows, you know, that comes, exists a lot in personal histories and family lineages that may need to be healed and cleared in terms of abuse or addictions, violence, poverty, any type of disease or illness that keeps showing up in families, feelings of abandonment, betrayal. So you can also work on these more collective karmic shadows. So we can still use a specific focus if you want, but we no longer do the time leaps like we used to. We don't no longer go as deep, but it's up to you. If you still find it relevant for a specific issue, I recommend you doing it because it works very well. So you can still do code soul, deactivate information of fear of abandonment, for example, received, generated, and felt in childhood, for example, or at age 3 when your dad left or something like that. In all DNA strands of the person's name in the 4 levels of belief. And then code spirit, deactivate information of fear of abandonment, always being abandoned by people, I can't trust anyone, everyone will always leave me, you know, I will always be alone. These kind of affirmations that like program that people keep tapping into in the back of their minds. We see generated and felt during childhood in their all DNA strands in their 4 levels of belief. So this is just one example, okay? And then we do the programming of the positives, the top positive potentials, okay? So again, any positive feelings, belief, affirmations, also programming, spiritual mastery, wisdom, divinity, freedom, ascension codes. So you can also work with, you know, as far as you like. So we always start by first touching the symbols. So for example, that would be code soul and then bringing it here. And normally we would do more like clockwise movements because we are inserting a new program. Code soul, my consciousness chooses to activate information of unconditional love in the latent genes in the 4 levels of belief. Code spirit, my consciousness chooses to activate information of unconditional love in the latent genes in the 4 levels of belief. And you can, you know, you can sometimes you can place your crystals over the pineal tones in between the codes just to increase this potency of the sound healing, okay? And remember that when we are clearing and deactivating, we normally use anti-clockwise movements with our crystal point. If we are activating and then we also protect and shield the energy, we always use clockwise movements. So positive information, you know, can be anything from love, peace, joy, happiness, health, acceptance, abundance, etc. Gratitude, self-love, self-esteem, liberation, enlightenment, forgiveness. You know, we can put all that information by using the code soul and code spirit commands. Okay, but it's up to you how much time you have, what, you know, what your focus is. So normally just try to rebalance. If you clear something negative, just try to rebalance with a few positives that corresponds to the positive side of whatever you're working on. Okay, so if there is fear, you can also add love and courage and, you know, whatever corresponds to that fear in particular. Okay. So I'm just going to the manual now, just to look for some information that I'd also like to share with you in terms of the more specifics for this new crystalline grid. I was just trying to see. Okay, so there is an introduction there about what the crystalline grid is and the tools. There's more information about the tools. And then the code soul and code spirit, the symbols that I've just talked about, what they mean. So everything is on your manual, anything that we've talked about today, the other elements, the Buddhic column, the platinum vortex, and also some information about the platonic solids, the 5 elements, some about alchemy. And normally, you know, we use these 5 platonic solids made of quartz because also we are, you know, increasing the effectiveness and the healing frequency of our treatments by using crystals, which, as you know, can generate and help a lot, bringing positive energies into your treatments. Okay, so there's that information that you're familiar with, so nothing has changed here. So the step-by-step is still the same, so we encourage you to do the anamnesis, the information that you can find through the initial conversation with your client, and try to focus on the main issues first. Even if you don't have much time, try to find out what's the main, like the top layer, what is really troubling the person on that day, and then work your way down as far as you can. Of course, it's, you know, it's not easy, or it's not even possible to work on all the information on that the person brings in just one session, but we can work in layers and see how the person feels, if they feel relieved, if they feel calmer and more pacified, if they're ready to move on with their lives. So you can feel the, you know, the results are very quick and effective. We may also use astrology. If you know how to read the birth chart, you can also use that to look at deep issues, challenges, things that need to be worked on. Okay, then we do the initial connection like we were doing before. These are the same steps, okay? So nothing has changed there, connecting with the divine presence of the practitioner and the client. And then we start cleansing and healing and harmonizing the subtle bodies, okay? So for cleansing and rebalancing, now we just use the quartz crystals and platonic solids, okay? And we start with the cube, with circular movements, anti-clockwise to clear, and then clockwise to harmonize and to give healing, okay? So remember that ether has this organizing catalyst effect over the other elements, representing divine energies to seal and to shield the energy field. So even when you're working on the DNA, you could even bring some of these 5 elements into the DNA. So you can play with your crystals also when you're working on the DNA, okay? Especially the divine fire of transmutation. I use it very often when I'm also working on the DNA. So it's so powerful. Then we close the subtle bodies, and then finally we can do part 2 of the session, opening the DNA strands, working on deactivating, clearing negative information, using the counterclockwise movements, okay? You always touch the, you know, the symbol first, the code soul, code spirit, okay? There are also some commands here that I've added in terms of self-healing to clear any negative or limiting beliefs. So now Regia has simplified that, and she's using statements and commands such as code spirit, my consciousness chooses, fear is over, betrayal is over, sadness is over, depression is over. So you can say over code spirit, my consciousness chooses, depression is over, code spirit, clear all negative beliefs, code spirit, clear all negative blocks and limitations. You can just use code spirit because it accesses the mental body, and then you can say the command in a simplified way. Okay, when you're treating a client, then normally we say the person's name. Okay, so code spirit, person such and such. Our consciousness chooses to deactivate abandonment, rejection, low self-esteem, life is hard belief, in all 4 levels of belief. So you just keep saying that code spirit for each item, okay? You can still use crystals, use any positive affirmations afterwards, okay? So we always start by placing the crystal over the symbol, and then we drag it across the center of the crystalline grid over the flower of life. And after using each crystal, normally we just place it over the pineal tone just for a while with the intention. It's like it's already working a bit like divine delivery, and then we do the final divine delivery at the end of the session. Okay, but every time you use a crystal, You can place it over the pineal tones when you're doing the DNA reprogramming. So the pineal tones aim to transmute the healing work into sound frequencies that are in tune with it. And then these vibrational frequencies that were generated during the session will be connected and sent to the crystalline grid to reach all human beings. So finally, when we finish the work, we take the crystal to the higher Merkaba symbol. So this higher Merkaba, for example, so your crystal was here. After you finish the commands, then you move it here to the top, and you can say, you know, the full procedure for closing the session that is on the manual. Okay. So there is a note here that is interesting. It's like the whole healing process on the crystalline grid is like an inner prayer. Okay. I recommend that you speak it out loud, but you can even not say it and just keep it to yourselves. It's up to you. Okay. It's more about the connection and the intention behind. Okay. So when we are activating the positive information, we just select all the information we want to use. We can still use the platonic solids. We can use our crystal tips, our crystal wands, any crystals during this part of the treatment, and use the commands. So code soul, my consciousness chooses to activate information of love, of inner peace. For example, in the latent genes, in the 4 levels of belief, code spirit, my consciousness chooses to activate information of inner peace in the latent genes, in the 4 levels of belief. So again, we use, in this case, normally we would use clockwise movements, but just use it intuitively, okay? Over the DNA, the flower of life, okay? We can even leave the crystals for a little while when we're working, just to if you feel there is something to be worked on that specific area of the DNA, just intuitively feel you might need to leave the crystal there for a little while. And then you put it on the pineal tone symbol, and then finally to the Merkaba. Okay, so it's also important when you're doing the positive information, the reprogramming, to do, after you've done everything, I like to protect and seal the work. So normally I put this intention, and I would just go around the flower of life. You could even go around the whole energy field. Before you do the final delivery, I like to put the protection, shielding all the work, protection at all levels, like creating a cloak, a shield of protection, because sometimes there are interferences during the work, and I think it's good to shield and to seal the work after you've done it. Okay, so there's some information here also on the manual for a healing session for specific issues such as clearing contracts, vows, pacts from this lifetime, other lifetime. You can even dowse to see where this, for example, this vow is located on the body, you know, dowsing over the 5-pointed star, or dowsing over the DNA to see where that vow is, so that, you know, your pendulum will show you if there is a place where it is like locked in, and then you can work around that point with your crystal when you're doing the deactivation and the reprogramming. Okay. So normally you know, this vow could be located on the emotional body, for example, if it's like a love vow, or the mental body. So we just use the crystal wand, the tip, to do anti-clockwise movements to clear, deactivating while we are saying the commands, okay? Keeping your focus. So your intention is the most important thing in the whole healing session. It's not so much the procedure, the step-by-step, it's more about the intention. And being this clear channel for that divine healing energy. We may also use prayers or affirmations, even flower remedies, color healing, Ho'oponopono. You know, you can use different tools at this point for forgiveness, liberation. Okay, so there are some suggested commands for clearing vows, pacts, and soul contracts. You can also read those. And then finally, we close the DNA strands to the center of the drawing. I am activate the closing of all DNA strands in the 4 levels of belief. And then we still do the deactivation and disconnection code. So activate total disconnection and immediate removal of any negative information generated and received during this session for myself, or during the connection with person such and such. Code Spirit activate total disconnection and immediate removal of any negative information generated and received during this session or during the connection with person such and such, okay? So remember that the board is self-cleansing. So after we've done the final disconnection, it cleanses, okay? And then you can drag your crystals across to the higher Mechana symbol on the top. So remember, this is where we're going to be doing the divine delivery, okay? And you'll say, I am, activate divine delivery, sharing on the crystalline grid, the stem cell of this work, to ensure that these new patterns will germinate in the collective consciousness. I ask for the most benevolent of results. In the name of the divine presence I am of Raquel Sacramento, I deliver this work so the best may be done for myself and all people involved, directly and indirectly, cleansing, forgiving, zeroing, synchronizing with the strength of the galaxy. I affirm and determine it is done, it is done, it is done. Amen. And so it is. So this is how I normally finish my treatments, okay? I recommend you doing the DNA reprogramming after you've done the cleansing and harmonizing of the subtle bodies. So please always respect that phase 1 before you do the phase 2. And in some cases, if people just need a very quick fix, like SOS treatment, energy rebalancing, you can do just the phase 1. So you can do just the clearing, harmonizing, rebalancing of the subtle bodies in all manifested dimensions, just clearing, and just a really quick, easy fix treatment for people, okay? So always trust your intuition, your spiritual guidance. If you feel things, just work on them, you know, beyond what I've just said. There's some information here that also Reggie Prado shared with us, how to use the crystalline grid on a higher perspective. So to do collective healing for the whole of humanity or a specific issue, we could also work, you know, focusing on human beings as a whole. So we can also use the flower of life, for example, as the center to support to work on the collective level, for example. If you want to work on collective issues, you can also give it a go, okay? So at the end of the manual, we have a list of the main negative feelings for transformation. Again, it's easier to use during a session. You can always add other if that helps you, okay? And then there's also the positive feelings for programming, all the positive feelings that you might like to add. And then I've also included suggested reading, interesting books that you might enjoy, especially this one by Dr. Joe Dispenza, Becoming Supernatural, How Common People Are Doing the Uncommon. So that's a really good book, very easy to read, where he gives scientific explanation to altered states of consciousness, how to co-create using that 0 point, that expanded consciousness state. And I think that gives you also some scientific basis and explanation that you can also use in your sessions and also for yourself to go deeper into what's behind all of this quantum healing work. Also this book by Bruce Lipton, Biology of Belief, How the Power of Consciousness Can Act Over Matter and Your Own Body and Your Own Biology. Also the work by Greg Braden is really interesting. And there's some more suggestions here. Okay, you can even go to YouTube and watch a few videos by Joe Dispenza or Bruce Lipton and Greg Braden, Deepak Chopra, Ervin Laszlo. So, you know, there are many interesting authors coming from science and bridging it with spirituality. So the new concepts, the latest concepts coming from this quantum view of the world are now being applied to healing, for example, with our techniques, with quantum psionics. Then there's still the list for commands to expand your consciousness. Of course, this is optional, but you could still go over the flower of life with clockwise movements using your crystals to say this command. So Code Spirit, activate all latent genes of wisdom, of true mastery. Code Spirit, activate protection is within me now. Code Spirit, activate my mastery, my spiritual intelligence. So you can just put that extra boost on your work, okay? So we have a list for anamnesis, and there's like the avatar, the little drawing here for you to play with if you still like to do that with yourself or your client during a session. It's a good anchor, like a neurolinguistic programming tool that we may use to help people visualize what, you know, all the process that they're going through in terms of determining all the information that we'll be working on during the session, and then you can erase it and just put a smiley face and help them to color their drawing. So that's also nice if you like that kind of thing with your clients. Okay. So just going back to the presentations here. Just to see if there's anything still left. So just additional considerations. Of course, you know this because you've already used the Crystalline Grid before, but if you haven't got much time, always try to clear the main negative feelings or beliefs or any conditioning first, okay? You could also just use code spirit. That code, if you want to work mainly on beliefs or programming or conditioning, and if you're working on negative feelings, you can use code soul, or, you know, I suggest to make sure use both codes, okay? So normally after a session, your clients should leave feeling well, balanced, refreshed, relieved, okay? Just check how they're doing at the end of the session. And remember that this is very deep work that it will need to be integrated over time. So normally it takes 2 or 3 days to fully integrate all the benefits of the Crystalline Grid sessions. And it's like we are defragmenting the disc, and then we are reaching a new state of awareness, a new state of being. And many people just feel surprised, like, oh, I no longer feel that sense of oppression or that recurrent thoughts, or, you know, I used to have this fear and I no longer remember about it. So there are many positive effects that you can get from these sessions, okay? There is a possible healing crisis sometimes after a healing session, okay? They can get very tired, very sleepy, they feel numb, they feel emotionally empty. So it's important to rest, to sleep, to drink water, to go to nature, you know, to give yourself time and the right environment to integrate any quantum sonic session. Actually, I feel that it's important to give yourself some rest after the session, and reassure your clients that it will all clear in due time, okay? There could be some crying or some old memories coming up, some dreams, but, you know, after a few days, it should all clear. So just, you know, try to be there for your clients to give extra help and support whenever necessary, okay? So remember that, just quickly going to this new way of deprogramming the DNA. So we again open the 12 energetic strands. We choose any tools like our crystals that we'll be using, okay? We take the tools to the code soul or code spirit, and we use it over the DNA, saying the commands, okay? And then we also use the same procedure for the activation. And then we take that crystal that we're working on over the pineal tones, okay, to leave it there for a little while we do the rest of the healing. So we keep taking the crystals over to the pineal tone symbol. And then finally, we do the divine delivery over the Merkaba symbol, okay? So repeat this for all potentials, for all the things you're doing. So then we disconnect. We've already done this. There's also a final command, a divine delivery command here, optional, and a prayer of the cosmic human. This is nice as well. So I think this is the main information we had to share with you. So this was a quicker webinar, and I hope you've enjoyed it, like feeling a sense of expansion and possibility. I feel like this new board allows for more intuitive work in a way. Okay, it's like we're working on higher octaves again. The idea is that also quantum psionics is also evolving, and these boards also have a life of its own, and they are evolving and being transformed, which is interesting. Just keep focused on, you know, working with 100% divine healing energies. Always do your own, you know, procedure, initial procedure, especially for clearing your space, you know, putting some protection, invoking the help and guidance and protection of all your spiritual guides, helpers, hierarchies of light. So bring as much light and protection and help as you can. And, you know, and then after the session, you also clear yourself in the room. But just make sure that you're connecting to the source energy with the help of your spiritual guides, and just clearing and shielding your work. I think that's really important because of some possible interference sometimes. Okay. So I think this is the information that I had to share today. I hope you have enjoyed this. And I hope that, you know, if you have questions or just practice a little bit with the new boards, just following the manual, the step-by-step, and then we can have a Q&A session soon. I'll be traveling to China again in early April, but I'll be available for a Q&A possibly next week. So I'll put that on the group, on the Facebook group. And in the meantime, thank you so much for sharing this webinar with me. I hope you have enjoyed it and it has been clear for you. And please let me know if you have any questions. And I'll see you again, okay, very soon. Take care, everyone.